Hi, I'm Doug Vo from the Dye-Hill Foundation, and this is like part 2 of the previous 6D, which was on the problems we have with the sun and X-rated flares, and the problems we could have with it because of possible Carrington events. So this is going to explain in depth why that Senate Bill 4488 was created. I'm going to basically go through, I'm going to define the dangers, what the bill is intended to protect. Also, the bill is written, and the minute I go through some of the parts of it, it was really written for 2 disasters, not just Carrington events, but something else much more important, actually. So, executive orders and acts or laws that preceded this bill, and what preceded information caused the Senate Bill 4488 to be proposed, and who actually did the original research. The important points in the bill, why the bill was written, and whose research caused it. Like I've said before, the reason why I was able to figure out what causes the ice age and geomagnetic reversals, aka polar reversals, is because of philosophy. This information theory of existence that I first wrote back in 1977. It's a lot of years ago. And the next iteration of the theory was in 2007. This is really why I put the whole thing together of when the reversal is going to happen, what to look for. Even the Hebrew alphabet stuff is in there, and some legends and stuff like that. It's really quite important. And then finally, this is the 3rd iteration of the philosophy theory of multidimensional reality. I'll probably do another one after that. Okay, here's the bill. Senate 4488. Now, Michigan's, the chairman of the committee is Senator Gary Peters, Democrat. But note the committee that this thing came out of: Homeland Security and Government Affairs. The Republican, Robert Portman, is really the one who first has his name on it, but the chairman also put his name on it too. Again, Homeland Security. There's never been a bill presented in American history like this bill. You'll understand it immediately when I go through the stuff, but this is going to be a good education. If you're an employee of Homeland Security, you're going to find out why Bush went from an executive order to about a year after creating it as a law. Okay, this bill covers 2 dangers threatening mankind. It is, when I say there was never been a bill like this ever written, I'm not kidding. I'd like all of you to wind up going to the Senate, search for the bill, and download it before they take it off or change it. I want you also to support the bill and write your senators to support this thing and get it through the House or the Senate quite quickly. Okay, so what the previous video was showing, 6D, was the dangers of a possible Carrington event. You'd see it as an aurora borealis, but which represents billions of charged electrons, particles, coming into our atmosphere. But the danger it does is when it goes to the wires of the transmission lines, and it goes to the transformers and burns them out, or it can go to your house and burn your house also. That's why this is important. This here is to show you our idea, or the traditional idea of solar maximum and what is the heat generating source in the center of the sun is wrong. And they know it. The ones who are real scholars know it. This is a journal article, Nature, volume 276, back to December 1978. No support is found for the conventional view of the sunspot cycle, that there exists a large random walk in the phase of the cycle. Instead, both sunspots and DH, solar terrestrial weather indicators, seemed to be placed by an accurate clock inside the sun. That's That's why when I found the clock cycle in the universe, it explained why stars go off and nova and create the ice age, etc. Because basically, remember this, the universe is the product of information. Matter is created by the information that creates this reality. The standard physics model calls for the sun producing at least 5.8 neutrinos per day, but none had been found, which is a very big problem for the nuclear physics. Dr. John Bickel concluded, the conflict between observed and standard theory has been led to many speculate about the solar interior that were advanced because their proponents believe that the subject is in a state of crisis. The Americans tested for neutrinos, and with 100,000 gallons of cotton tetrachloride in a mine that was at least 10,000 feet down. We did a recurrent experiment is a bunch of round discs that they put into Antarctica in the ice. The Japanese have tested this thing and tried it different ways. Some of the universities have here in the US. The Italians have done it. And still, they're not coming up with neutrinos. One day, I think I'll do probably a video just on that and how it came about. But here's the thing you have to know. Like I showed in the previous videos, able to calculate when sunspot maximums were based on my formulas and my clock cycle, 12,068 years. A Kleisberg cycle is 88.73 years, which represents 8 sunspot maximums. Gives you one clock cycle, 136 gives you the 12,068 years. There's your clock cycle. That alone proves the universe is the product of information and we're a synchronous system. Okay, February 2004, physicist Pete Riley of predictive sciences. Anyway, he did a paper, went back 50 years and looked at sunspot cycles, I think M and X's. Went back 50 years, and he concluded that the odds for having another Carrington class event was 12%. But look when he did it, February of 2014. So there, it takes about a month to typeset and print the journal, and he probably submitted it 2 months before. So we're back to November. So he missed all of these X flares, all of them, plus these, total of 52 in that solar cycle 24, the solar cycle just before ours. He totally missed this, but it's not his fault. He did a great job. He felt it necessary to do what he did when he did it. I think if he did another paper and he saw what I saw, he'd up that chance to what I think from 15 to 20%. In fact, we missed one by 5 or 9 days. There was one that was that bad. This is how many X-rated flares that we had. Solar cycle 29, 22 is 32, 70 in cycle 23, and cycle 24, 52. We're in cycle 25. And this is what we've gotten so far. This is how many we've had so far. Anyway, that's why go back to video series 6D if you haven't seen it, and watch that also. Anyway, this is what this bill is trying to protect and save. These are the big transformers and the substations. If the transmission lines have a huge spike of energy, if it hits these things and they're not properly grounded, or some fail-safe mechanism, a fusing system, these things burn out and it takes over a year or more to replace them, which means you have no electricity in your community. Problem is they have to increase the grounding, and like I said, crooks have been stealing the metal, the copper or whatever else that they use for grounding rods. I think this bill should also have in there a mandatory 10 years in prison for people who steal this stuff, and 5 years in prison plus fines for those smelters who knowingly take these rods and smelt it for money. they should get 5 years in prison too. No negotiations, that's it, you're in jail. This is what happens when a solar flare hits these transformers. This is from South Africa. Transformer number 4, a high voltage winding damage. It basically just melted. By the way, when these things melt enough voltage, even though these things melt, the voltage arcs and keeps going sometimes. You can't help it if you're dealing with millions. Well, this thing I think was supposedly designed for 400,000 kilowatts. Imagine there's 2 or 3 million or more volts hitting it, amps hitting it. It's going to arc and keep going. Here's transformer number 5, overheating. Again, the voltage comes in and fried everything. We're talking about serious thing, but look how many in the period. They say this is between October and November 2003. So here's the end of October, November, and look, X17, 10, 8, 3, 28. Any one of these, unfortunately for South Africa, they got hit. I don't know what part of South Africa, I'd love to find out. This is Oak Ridge National Lab. I covered that in the previous video. This is how they break down the grid. And this is again what the government's trying to protect. Now the history of how this bill came about. So you understand this did not come out of thin air. This is long in the making. January 20th, 1969, Apollo 11 lands on the moon. 4 days later, July 24th, Apollo returns to the Earth with the moon samples. What did they see in the moon samples? They saw glass beads with 4 or 5 radioactive elements and fission tracks. Could only have come from a stellar nova. Thomas Gould runs a paper, September 26th, actually was in NASA's reports, and he winds up saying a nova could have caused the glazing. He says a nova-like event. NASA cut him off and canceled his contract. I guess he's not supposed to say that. Okay. 60 days after they came back, they had the interview with the 3 astronauts. 2 are on the moon. When you look at it, and I covered in one of the earlier videos, they look like they were at a funeral. You'd think they'd be the happiest guy in the world. No, they look like they were at a funeral. You see the videos yourself and you'll see what I mean. And everybody noticed it. They must have been told why they really went there, and don't say anything about the cracking glass underneath their feet that we're walking on, the melted glass beads. And 90 days after this, Nixon did, October 28th, Nixon did Executive Order 11490. This is very important. It was 17,300 words. I've read it. I've read all of this stuff. And he did it because what they found on the moon, they knew this thing was, they knew the sun nova, period. They knew it. These are some of the laws that they created. I'm not going to go through all of them. It's not necessary. I go through it in a previous video about what the government's done. Along comes Reagan, November 18th, 1988. His own executive order, which does away with Nixon's executive order. It's about 10,000 words. 10 days later, he writes the bill. Now, this bill is mentioned in the current Senate bill, the Robert T. Sanford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act. That's a mouthful. 71,600 words. That's a lot. That's the title number for you. Anyway, then you have George Bush, President George Bush. And he, on October 8th of 2001, establishes Homeland Security and Homeland Security Council as an executive order. But it was over a year and a month later, that it was converted into the Homeland Security Act and actually formally created the agency. And I want to show you why. This is why. He writes this thing in 1991. But look at all the X-rated flares that happened after. At some point you realize, look what happened. This is this solar cycle, and this is after it. X12s, 10s, X12s. X9, but look how many electron volts. That's 43 million or 43 billion. Probably picked up or measured by the satellites. So that's why they knew they had a real problem. They had to wind up really having a regular agency that they can actually appropriate money for. This is probably when they really started spending money on building the shelters. Let's go on. Okay, transfer. Okay, then we get to Obama administration. His Executive Order 13575 establishes the White House Rural Council. It did nothing. It had nothing to do with Rural Council, but you're going to see in a second, or in a few minutes, really why it was created. And then Trump created one. He voids Obama's, because it did nothing for really rural, had nothing to do with it really, and created Promoting Agriculture and Rural Prosperity in America, revokes Obama's stuff. And that was April 25th, 2017. This is why the bureaucracy turned against him. Okay. Preceding information caused the Senate Bill 4488 to be proposed. The following is what I presented in video for providing what caused the reversal and the ice age. It is the clock cycle every 12,068 years. These couple of screens I'm going to just review for people who haven't seen video series 4. I'll go fast. It's my definition of what happens, the ice age and polar reversal. Stage 1, the Earth stops the rotation at the exact time of the reversal. I estimate 7 to 8 hours it stops. Here's the series you'd watch, part 1, the long one. Number 2, at the same time, the sun novas. The radiant heat from the sun causes at least 500 feet, at least that, of ocean water to evaporate. That is worldwide. Now we know that from carbon-14 dating of organic material they found in the continental shelves around the world. I think one off the coast of Vietnam was almost 550 or so feet down. Here's the parts you can watch. Part 2, 2B, 4F, 4G, and Series 4. When the Earth's rotation stops, the oceans continue and in easterly direction at its former rotation speed. The oceans continue over the continents depending on the size of the ocean west of the landmass. Now, I don't know, and nobody knows how fast the rotation slows down. Is it a day or is it 2 days? We don't know. But it has to do with the Earth's magnetic field. They knew that. The RAND Corporation did a study for the Air Force, and I mentioned it in one of the earlier videos. And I think it was 1976. I have the paper. You can buy it now for 25 bucks. And the conclusion, they wanted to know why the Earth's rotation was slowing down sometimes. And the end of the paper, they said that the reason is because the Earth's magnetic field evidently controls the rotation of the Earth. So extrapolate in the future. If the Earth's magnetic field goes to 0, what do you think happens? And then it reverses. Well, I've said in a couple of videos, the reason I think is one or more of the carrier waves that make up this planet, and maybe the sun, causes the rotation. It has to do with the phasing of information. Number 4, 15 to 17 hours after the nova, the dust shell will hit the Earth. And I go into it in Series 4, parts 4A and 5E, the evidence of it. It's the glass beads again, found on the Moon, Mars, and all over the Earth. It's a question of just looking for it. It will take about 7 days for the oceans to stop sloshing around and return to the ocean basins. I go into part 3 and part 6B. Sometimes within the first 7 days after the reversal, it will start raining. Now first, the Bible actually says hot rain came down on the sinners. And after a while, probably within a week, it'll start snowing. And depending on how far away you are from the equator. If you're farther away, it's going to snow a lot sooner. And that's the problem. And it'll continue snowing until all that moisture, remember, you're going to have at least 500 feet of ocean evaporate. It's worldwide. And it's going to be up in the upper atmosphere until it winds up coming down in the form of snow. And it'll keep snowing for maybe 30 or 40 years. The reason I said 40, I came across a journal article where they found the blue clay, northern Lake Superior, I think it was, and they estimated it was deposited within 4 years. And that's as good as any, but it might be less. It depends on what part of the earth you're at. That's why I want people to really be closer to the equator. Anyway, that's what happens here. When you get done, you've got the Ice Age. Last time, geologists think that New York had an ice field that was 5,000 feet thick. Seattle area had 4,000 feet thick. If you have hard pan under your feet in your backyard, then depending on how many feet down and how hard it is, you had a glacier over you. Here's the basic law. Now, I'm going to say this. For those who are emotionally weak, probably don't watch this. It's one thing when you say someone has a theory and I don't believe him, he's a quack, whatever, or I have a hard time understanding and believing it. It's another when you see the hard facts in front of your face, and this is a proposed law. Then you understand this is not a joke, that other people have gone through my work, and you'll see it shortly, and they tested it and they believe me. But this is the actual excerpt from the law. But again, I want all of you to download it and read it. Print it out. Basic needs. Now, every bill has basically definitions. We're going to go through the definitions and that'll freak you out bad enough. Basic needs. The term basic needs means any goods, services, activity necessary to protect the health, safety, and general welfare of the civilian population of the United States. Remember, it's supposed to be the United States. But you'll see some other points there that say, why does he want to make agreements with other countries? Okay, it includes food, water, shelter, basic communication services, and public safety. Pay attention on this. Catastrophic incident. The term catastrophic incident means an incident, whether caused by human or natural events, in which multiple levels of the United States critical infrastructure are destroyed, damaged, or interrupted in sufficient magnitude to threaten the health, safety, and general welfare of the civilian population of the United States. Existential risk. Let me wind up defining what existential means. A lot of people don't know. I looked it up in Webster's Unabridged Dictionary and a few other places. Existential is derived from the root word existence. What existential means is the threat of non-existence. The term existential risk means the risk of human extinction. Got that? It's sinking in. Global catastrophic risk. The term global catastrophic risk means the risk of events or incidents consequential enough to significantly harm and set back or destroy human civilization at the global scale. They actually define what some of these disasters are, and you'll find out nothing fits except for one. Global catastrophic and existential threats. The term global catastrophic and existential threats means those threats that with varying likelihood can produce consequences severe enough to result in a significant harm or destruction of human civilization at the global scale or lead to human extinction. Examples of global catastrophic and existential threats include severe global pandemics. The last pandemic that the Chinese created for us, courtesy of, the CDC helped fund that. That only affected some. I had to go to the hospital for, 45 days or 40 some odd days. My wife went there for less time. My son solved the problem. He was at the time 36. He wound up drinking heavily in the backyard, sunbathing a lot, and he didn't have any problem at all. You figure. Try not to laugh too hard, okay? I keep telling him he shouldn't explore the Irish side of the family. So that's nonsense. A severe global pandemic does not affect the whole world and kill everybody off. Nuclear war, again, we've had plenty of wars. World War II never affected South America, Central America, or even North America, except for maybe Hawaii. And none of Africa, except for North Africa. India, no. Iran, Middle East, no. So it's not nuclear war. In fact, even people survive near Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Even when they were a couple of miles away, they got radiation burns and stuff like that, but they still lived. Asteroid and comet impacts. This is the biggest joke. I covered that anyway. They were trying to say that a comet or meteor hit the Yucatan, and that's what did the dinosaurs in 65 million years ago. Well, 65 million years ago, they showed in one of the videos, the Yucatan was underwater. It was the Gulf of Mexico, because we had maybe 75 or 80%, 85% water covering the Earth, not the 66% we have now. So there wouldn't be any fire that goes around the whole world. Forget it. That's got to be one of the dumbest, stupidest things I've ever seen in my life. It's like they forgot about the inverse square law. I mean, it's just incredible. But remember what one of the intelligence agencies, intelligence in quotes, were doing. They were diverting you to think something else is going to cause it. Because both of these are random. What I'm saying, you could set your clock to it, and some other solar physicists know there is a clock, some kind of clock inside the sun. Supervolcanoes, again, a localized thing. That doesn't kill the whole world off, forget it. Sudden and severe changes to the climate. Gee, what did I just define? What the polar reversal does? That's certainly severe and sudden. And intentional or accidental threats arising from the use and development of emerging technologies. Give me a break. There's so many civilizations that are so backwards, they're back almost to the Stone Age. It would never affect them. Nobody even comes in contact with them. The disaster I outlined, every single human being, no matter where you're hiding, is going to be affected by this event. Okay, back to Nixon's executive order. Now, the reason I'm doing this is so you see the agencies that are incorporated in this Senate bill. This isn't an accident. This bill doesn't fall out of the sky by accident. Okay, these are the departments that Nixon had. Now, this is only one sheet. There's another sheet after this. This is Obama's executive order. And the ones that were missing, I mean, look, Treasury, Defense, Justice, and Department of Housing and Urban Development, but missing here in Trump. This and two more you'll see in the next. I'll tell you why the bureaucracy turned against them. Department of Energy, they're all there. Okay, here's the section. Here's all the ones that Nixon listed. Here's the one that Obama listed in executive order. But look what's missing. Department of Treasury. Okay, what do you need the Department of Treasury for an agricultural bill? Of course not. And here, Department of Homeland Security, missing. Okay, now I'll tell you why. This told me Trump was never told about this disaster. So he took a bill that promoting agriculture and rural prosperity in America and made the bill, I read the bill, and make it actually do something. Obama's bill was creating a commission who reports to another presidential council who in turn reports to somebody else. In other words, Obama's purpose was to get all these departments that were somewhat included in Nixon's executive order to decide how they were going to contribute money towards building these DUMs, which are these cave shelters and tunnel systems all over the place. And how are they going to hide the money? So that's why the $21 trillion, the government doesn't want to admit to how they spent it. They didn't miss it. They know exactly where they spent it. So anyway, that's the reason why the bureaucracy, including his own attorney general, turned against him. They all want to save their own ass. Membership. The committee shall include senior representatives of. Now, this is what's incorporated in the Senate bill. Assistant to the President thinks. Director of Office of Science and Technology Policy, Director of National Intelligence, and Director of the National Intelligence Council. This council includes all the intelligence agency. Military, Army, Navy, Air Force, everybody, even the lesser agencies, Treasury, and CIA, and everything like that. But they don't mention the CIA directly at all. I don't think they have much of a reason to be in this thing now anymore. Okay, the ones that are in red are all the ones that were listed in Nixon, Obama's, or Trump's bills or executive orders. N is Nixon, O is Obama, T is Trump. Secretary of Homeland Security, Nixon, Obama. Secretary of State, Nixon. Attorney General, Nixon, Obama, Trump. Secretary of Energy, Nixon, Trump, and a bunch. These are the ones they added, additional ones. This is quotes right from the bill. Secretary of Health and Human Services, all three mentioned them. Secretary of Commerce, all three. Now, I'm going to stop here. Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere. I mentioned in the other videos the mistake that Nixon did. Instead of giving this information about that the sun novas, when they brought the samples back from the moon, is he gave it to the CIA. I actually feel sorry for the CIA for getting stuck with that job. They should have stuck with the law that created them, which is Section 104 of the National Security Act of 1947. It's 104 A and B. They're not supposed to do anything domestically. This is way over their head. And to prove that, if you read the Adam and Eve story, you realize somebody was incredibly stupid. Anyway, they should have given it to NOAA for the ocean research, NASA for the space of NOVA, and also USGS for sedimentary information. And who did they list? NOAA, NASA, and USGS, Geological Survey. Those who they should have originally gotten it. Somebody listened to me and included it in the bill. Okay, and Administrator of the Environmental Protection Act. That's just about, I think, useless. Think about it. In 24 years, sun novas, the oceans are going to rush over the continent and basically wash clean the petri dish. Don't worry about it. Director of National Science Foundation. Now, he's mentioned by Nixon and Trump, not by Obama. Remember, the ones who controlled them heavily was the CIA. They decided which papers were going to be funded and which ones were not. If you wanted to fund anything on solar activity regarding the sun May nova, or fission tracks, or cosmic rays, I showed in one of the earlier videos, you didn't get any money. There was a lot of papers published in the journal Nature, but not here in Science here in the United States. Secretary of Treasury, Chair of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve. Nixon and Obama mentioned them, but Trump didn't. Why? But this has to do with the money supply and stuff like that. And it has to do with the bankers and stuff like that. The problem is if the electricity goes down, how do you go to the bank and get money out? If the banks can't communicate with their main computers, then they have to go to a ledger system, but they don't know what your balance is. You can forget about credit cards. It's too, it's just, that's why they're included in this whole thing. They have an insurmountable problem. Secretary of Defense is mentioned last. This is a throwaway. Other stakeholders the President determines appropriate. Ignore number 17. So of the 16, 3 were not mentioned in previous bills. All the rest, 13 of them, were. It gives you an idea what the template was for writing this bill, except for the additions. Chairmanship. The committee shall be co-chairman by a senior representative of the President and the Deputy Administrator of the Federal Emergency Management Agency for Reliance. FEMA, which is under DHS. Remember, DHS was created because the sun really acted up. Okay, report requirement. In general, not later than 1 year after the date of enactment of the act, the President shall support, I'm going to continue. Detail assignment of global catastrophic and existential risk. I'd love to see how they're going to write that one. Matters covered. The report require under subsection A shall include expert estimates of cumulative global catastrophic and existential risk in the next 30 years. Global catastrophic and existential, let me hear the difference between existential and extinction. Existential is before you become extinct, and after you're all dead and buried and nobody left, you're extinct. So this is the before and the other one's the after. So, why did they do 30 years? When I started this research, why did they do 15 years, 20 years, a whole generation? Why did they pick 30? Why didn't they pick 40 or 50? Well, I started these videos in 2018. It was March. And that was like 4 years ago. Time flies. And that would have been 28 years. Now it's only 24 years. So somebody definitely was reading my stuff, and you can actually find out who or what department. Expert information and analysis. Go through the global catastrophic and existential threats, likelihood of occurrence. In other words, they need to know a time limit. I gave them one, but they're going to need to know that. Comprehensive list of potential catastrophic or existential threats, including even those that may have very low likelihood. Well, mine is 100%, so. Technical assistance and lay explanations for the analyzed global catastrophic and existential risk, including their qualitative character and key factors affecting their likelihood of occurrence and potential consequence. When you say there's going to be an ice age, you can't argue there wasn't. We know there was an ice age certainly about 12,000 years ago, and I have carbon-14 dating have gone 24, 36, and 48,000 years ago. So we know it happened. It's just, you can't deny it. A review of effectiveness of intelligence collection, early warning, and detection systems. That's the satellites and also ground-based stations. They want to find out is, do we have enough satellites up there? Will they get knocked out by a X-100 flare? And I was read that after X-15, I think they automatically cut out. Anyway, to review that, and also a forecast of if and any global catastrophic and existential risk is likely to increase or decrease significantly in the next 30 years, both qualitatively and quantitatively, et cetera, et cetera. Report on continuity of operations and continuity of government planning. They want to make sure the bureaucracy can keep functioning. Matters covered. The report required under subsection A, a detailed assessment of the ability of continuity of government and continuity of operations, plans, programs, and defined blah, blah, blah. Okay. To maintain national essential functions following global catastrophes. Remember, This bill is really created for two events. The first one you can deal with, which is basically Carrington type events, multiples. A budget proposal for continuity of government and continuity of operations program. This is where they spend the money. This is where the budget gets interesting. Necessary adequately maintain national essential functions during global catastrophes. We're almost done, by the way. 6, a strategy to ensure the health, safety, and general welfare of the civilian population of the United States. After a year, they want to have enactment of the act. He has to form the committee. The committee has to give a report. Provide for the basic needs for the, in the report it's going to have basic needs for the civilian population of the United States, impact blah, blah, blah. Coordinate response efforts with state and local governments, private sector and nonprofit relief organizations, promote personal and local readiness. Some of the stuff, good luck on trying to get local government or even state government and the bureaucrats to move fast. That's the problem. What I was told by somebody in a federal agency, there's 2 speeds for government, slow and even slower. This is one case, they better do it fast. That's why I want you to write to your senators to get this thing through the Senate at least, to go to the House. It's got to be done fast. Attention of catastrophic events. Okay. Develop international partnerships with allied nations for the provision of relief services and goods. The reason why I think this is in here, and it's in there twice, is like I mentioned in my videos, you have to really be closer to the equator to really guarantee the second disaster that this thing is really talking about. And it's namely the polar reversal itself. I want people within the 16 or 17 degrees of the equator, so the ice age is mitigated to a degree. Elements of the strategy development under subsection A shall include a description of efforts of the President will undertake and agreements the President will seek with international allies to enhance the readiness of the United States. Again, they know they got to go to foreign governments, and my guess and assumption it's near the poles, near the equator rather, away from the poles, to enhance the readiness of the United States. How the strategic plans will be implemented should multiple levels of critical infrastructure be destroyed. That's really, they're really referring to Carrington type events. Assumptions. Multiple levels of critical infrastructure have been taken offline and destroyed by catastrophic incidents or the effect of catastrophic incidents. Okay. Impacted sectors. Transportation. All of these need electricity. Every one of them. Transportation. Electricity for pumps to pump both gasoline and diesel fuel to get you the product and deliver it. Pumps are needed in the pipelines to go from refinery to wherever, and from the wells to the refineries. Communications, forget about internet, telephone, your cell phone, everything, it would be down unless it's got backups. And how much diesel fuel are in some of these backups, they have to be constantly resupplied, which means the transportation sector has to be functioning. Energy sector, that's the most important. They got to make sure that goes from hydroelectric dams, nuclear dams, coal-fired plants. They have to be able to send the electricity out to transformers, but the transformers have been burned out. They can't send the voltage, the current out, which means you have to protect the grid, what they call the grid. Healthcare and public health sector. Without electricity, you're back to 19th century medicine. Water and wastewater sector takes pumps to bring the water from either a well or from a river, filtering and sending it off to the houses, and it takes a pump to the wastewater, the shit, to the waste processing plants to be processed and then filtered. And of course the financial sector, banks and credit cards and stuff like that. They all need electricity. The grid is necessary for all of this stuff. Now you understand why I need you to write to your senator to get this thing through the Senate fast. The emergency has exceeded the responsible capabilities of state and local government under the Robert T. Stanford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act. That is a real mouthful. Couldn't they shorten the damn title? Availability. Strategy developed under subsection A shall be available to the public and may be included in a classified, you bet, or other restricted annex to be made available to appropriate committees of Congress and appropriate government entities. National response exercise, not later than 1 year after the issuance of an implementation plan required under Section 7, the Department of Homeland Security shall lead a national exercise in coordination with the committee to test and enhance the operationalization of the implementation plan. I hope this is not 1 year after, but a few months after. We're really running out of time, and we're within that 2-year range of what I estimate sunspot maximum will be for solar cycle 25. And we are in a danger zone. Reporting requirements no later than 1 year after the date of which the Department of Homeland Security leads the national exercise. They're the lead organization. That's why they were created, as I showed. I don't know if they even know that, but that's the real reason they were created when they, as a law, not an executive order. Now, you sit back, words mean something. In this Senate bill, catastrophic is stated 36 times. Global catastrophic, 19 times. That 19 is within this. Existential, 17 times. Existential risk, 11 times. Extinction twice. Human extinction twice. They're all both together. And you saw it. I don't know what you thought when you saw this, but this is called a wake-up call. Executive Order 11490. You now know why it was created, because the samples they brought back from the moon, they knew the sun nova. They don't use any of these words. Executive Order by Reagan, they don't use it. Homeland Security Act by Bush, they never use these three words. Catastrophic, existential, and extinction. Robert T. Stanford, they mention catastrophic 28 times as catastrophic incident. Existential and extinction, never. Executive Order 575 by Obama, they don't mention it. Trump's executive order, catastrophic, only twice. Now you understand what I said. No bill has ever been written like this in American history. You're seeing something that's historic. Download it, save it, and write to your senator. Okay, now you're going to find out how this bill came about and why it was written. A brief going over what I did in the sequence of events. I started my video series on the theory of multidimensional reality in March 2018. It was series 1. In fact, it started the very date that was my March 14th Pi Day. And it was exactly the same day that Stephen Hawking died. I didn't plan it that way, it just happened. Anyway, I completed it in May of 2018, a total of 7 videos. Video series 1, I explained how I found the clock cycle of 12,068 years, and I showed it. I made a database and I found 6 blank periods, and 4 of the 6 were 12,068 light years apart. Since then, I had found, and I found one like about 13 or 14 cycles away, and a few others. They were all falling on cycles of multiples of that. Video series 4 was started November 2018 and mostly completed by March 22nd, 2019. That's important. You'll understand why. It explains and showed in 10 videos the scientific proofs of what causes the geomagnetic reversals, polar reversals, every 12,068 years. In April And May 2019, I did 3 more. The easy way and the hard way to survive the reversal. August 2019, a full 5 months after I got done with the nuts and bolts of video series 4 on what causes the ice age and polar reversal. DARPA, which is the defense research arm, started the tunnel circuit contest. Here it is, tunnel circuit, August. Now, what's interesting about this, and you should see the videos and you'll try not to laugh your head off. They wanted people to develop a program and whatever robot they came up with to be fully autonomous robots that can maneuver through a cave system and detect what the damage is and how to read QR codes and writing, as well as identify people and if they were dead or alive. This is a blow up on the video. This is what the video you can read. Series 4 parts 5G, 5H, and 6B. They hated some of the robots. So they wanted these robots to be able to see infrared and sense infrared if someone was dead or alive. Now you ask yourself, why do a fully autonomous robot? It's a cave system. They built these things all over the country, certainly on the East Coast. Are they saying that there won't be a real human which would do this job a lot better? To go through a cave system to see what kind of damage there was and report back and see who's dead or alive. No, they're really saying they can't get to the front door because there'll be from 1 to maybe 5,000 feet of glacial ice and snow above that. So they can't get to the door. That's why. Somehow I guess they were thinking of turning the thing on remotely, an RF signal of some sort, and let the robot go through the cave system and then come back to its docking station and report back. Anyway, February 2000, they put the reward up to 1.2 or 3 million. And the cave circuit went in August of 2020. When it wasn't canceled because of COVID, they had a prize of, I think, $52 or $53 million. Instead, they did a cave circuit, a virtual cave circuit of $2 million prize. They got cheap on them. Okay, this is where it gets, now you're going to find out who did the research for the bill. I'm not talking about myself now, I'm talking about in the government who did the research off of my work to make that bill. So pay attention. I wrote, August 13th, 2020, I wrote a 922-word letter to 7 leadership in the Trump administration. 3 were the leadership in the Pentagon. The registered letter was delivered to them, the Pentagon, August 20th. The letter also contained 2 of my books, Volume 3 and the one on the creation of the Hebrew alphabet. The letter covered my discoveries regarding what causes the Ice Age and geomagnetic reversals. I referred to them as Video Series 4 on my YouTube channel. The letter also mentioned my theory of multidimensional reality and Video Series 2 on the Hebrew alphabet. There was much more in the letter, and I can't go into it, and that's between them and me. September 7th, only 12 business days later, in fact, he sent this thing off to me on Labor Day. I received an encrypted email from a Proton Mail account. The email letter was 1,925 words long. The lead sentence was, contrary to popular belief, being in the military does not afford visibility over all things government, nor does it make you an expert on all things cataclysmic. I immediately knew I was talking to the right person, and this person was responding to my registered letter to the Defense Department, 3 of the leaderships. I think I know who sent it, which department caused it to be given to probably a colonel level person to respond to me and do the research. He addressed me as Mr. Vogt et al. I'll explain what et al. Means for those who haven't read journal articles. When you have a lot of authors, instead of listing all the authors, they just say the first person and then et al., meaning there's more than one person. But he knows all the books are only my name on it, and the videos only show my lovely face. So he knows it's only me. What he's really saying, it's his letter, and what he's doing is more than one person is writing that letter. I identified at least 3. Anyway, that's what's going on here. In his letter, he informs me of his studies in CME. That means coronal mass ejection, probabilities, and solar activity. So his job in the Pentagon was studying this danger, and solar activity could be nova. In his letter, he mentioned the nova, polar reversal, the oceans, the dust shell, the atmosphere, and some things mentioned in my video series 10. The things that I have in my video, on my letter, he mentions everything that's in there. Went through the whole thing. Now, this is what he said just after this earlier part. Despite having some idea regarding good places to be, it is hard to believe conventional humanity can survive what you describe. Extreme earthquakes, floods, winds, volcanoes, heat, stellar impact, solar radiation, fast freezing, thousands of feet of snow and ice, devastation of plant life, food sources, and subsequent famine, years of darkness. These are all the things we know happened during the last ice age, including the volcanoes. So, and it's the stuff I mentioned in the videos as well in my book. He also mentioned he read and had a copy of God's Judgement. Now, I didn't send them that book, so they already had that book for his research. He also mentioned seeing most of my videos up to that date, and he actually refers to a bunch of them. He was really through the whole thing. His letter included 25 questions he wanted me to answer and 5 of his opinions, which he also wanted me to answer. I never had a letter like this from anybody, but you could tell this is really quite special. Towards the close of the letter, he mentioned this about my YouTube. Viewership numbers may consist almost entirely of interested government workers. How would he know that? Well, they would. They know the IP address of every government computer and probably all their employees. So they may have a way of filtering out those IP addresses in YouTube. But they know who's been on it. That's obviously he's been on it. I believe this army officer was the person in charge of researching the effects of solar activity on the Earth and what it means for the continuation of society. Well, he admits it in the very beginning of the letter, as I showed. I mean, that's what his job was. That's why I think he has to be probably colonel level. This is like the end. So you see the bill. This is reality. It's not fiction, not fantasy land. You're looking at reality. This bill is a result of this Army officer's research for not just the 2 years since I gave him the letter and he looked at my stuff, but also other stuff he did before me. And he tells me in the letter he doesn't believe a lot of the other stuff. But it's obvious by what you saw in that bill, they believe me. And they know what's coming. So, like I said earlier, there's never been a bill like this before in American history, ever. That's the end. Dye-Hole Foundation is a non-profit public science foundation. And you should, we need the money. I want to send one of my geologists to Machu Picchu and do the research for find out if that Pacific Ocean actually did splash up 12,500 feet. It would give me an idea of how big this wave is going to be when it finally hits on the eastern side of the Andes and goes across and over Brazil and the rest of South America. Anyway, I hope you learned something. Treat the information, I guess, gingerly. Only tell the people who refer to it. Number one, tell your boss, the guy who owns the company you work for, so they can prepare. I probably have to do another video on some of the things we know you should do to prevent your business and your house from burning from a spike of energy from a Carrington type event, which is a real danger. And other relatives, only if they're really level-headed and not, you know who somebody's mentally an adult and somebody who's mentally a child. The children don't bother with. The adults and somebody who's serious, those are the ones you talk to. Anyway, take it easy. Hope you enjoy it.